When the United States signed the Declaration of Independence, they kind of had an identity crisis. They knew they weren't ruled by England, but what were they? The Founding Fathers wanted to make a form of government that didn't have too much power because they just escaped a tyranny. So the Articles of Confederation were made, in which the government had none to little power, and the states were responsible for themselves. However, the Fathers then realized that this was not a good way to govern the now states. So the Constitution came along that included our Bill of Rights and the amendments that our country now runs by. Our republic is what the United States became and still is. Now, what is a republic, and is it different from a democracy? The answer is yes, and here is why. A democracy is the government by the people, exercised directly or through elected representatives. A republic is a political order in which the supreme power lies in a body of citizens who are entitled to vote for representatives and officers who are responsible for them. On the political spectrum, the far left means total government and the far right means no government. Understanding the political spectrum can help us understand why the United States is a republic and not a democracy. Now, there are 5 forms of government. Starting from the far left, there's a monarchy, in which one person is responsible for the whole government. Then an oligarchy, which means that a few are responsible. A democracy is next, which means the rule of the majority. A republic then follows, which means the rule of law. Then lastly, on the far right, there's an anarchy in which no government exists. A republic is closer to the right end of the spectrum than a democracy, and here is why. A republic is the rule of law, which means that, for example, if the idea of free college was proposed, then the lawmakers would draft the bill, vote on it, then let the people know of the decision made. People vote for those who want to represent them, like the senates. That's why we are a republic and not a democracy, because in a democracy, the law is proposed, then given directly to the people to vote on, and the majority decides whether the law is passed or not. In simpler terms, a republic means the rule of law, and a democracy means the rule of the majority. Another example is the recent election we just had. Now, if we were a democracy, Hillary Clinton would be the president and not Donald Trump. But because we are a republic and the people don't directly get to vote, we have an electoral college that decides who wins, and it is not by the majority. The framers knew not to give too much power to the government or to the people because that would create a dictatorship all over again, like they had with England. They made the Constitution anti-majority. For example, the president is not elected by the majority vote and can veto the people of Congress, however, can be overridden by 2/3. Having a democracy would soon mean that it would turn into a dictatorship when the majority states rule over the minority states, making them underrepresented. That's what a republic tries to stop from happening, the rule of the majority. In a democracy, people vote for the most part based on their emotions and not logic. One group gets power, leaving the others demeaned. Having the United States as a republic and not a democracy, I think, is one of the reasons why it is a leading country. Well, some might say England is a leading country and it is a democracy. However, the United States is much more diverse, with different ethnicities and religions, making for more minorities than in other countries. I've lived that, coming from Egypt, where everybody almost looks the same, except for very few that come from different places like Syria and Malaysia, and then coming to the United States in 2013, where no one looks like anyone and everybody is their own person, makes me think that a democracy, the rule of the majority, wouldn't work out well in the States than it would in other countries to a certain extent. We are a federal republic and a constitutional representative democracy because we are ruled by law and the people get to vote for those who want to represent them. A republic in which the government is ruled by law is what the United States is and always will be, because it is the best form of government that our country can uphold.